Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about what players have that dog in them. But what does it mean to have a dog inside of you? For me, it's a player that while he's on the court attaches his emotions to his competitive nature. A player that leverages his own animosities and resentments into his play. There are a lot of players that are very good and play it cool and never seem to have a personal vendetta against their opponent. This isn't to say that a player has to channel some sort of hatred into his game to be good, because it does go the other way too. A lot of players let their emotions get out of control, and this leads to malicious and lazy plays off the ball. So a player with that dog in them can channel that aggression into cerebral, clean basketball. I want to go over 3 different categories of players. The first category I'm going to call the cats. These are the talented players that kind of let the game happen to them. Towards the end of a game that they are losing, they think, oh, I guess this is happening, versus a player with that dog in them thinks this is not happening to me. The first cat I want to talk about is James Harden. Obviously, James Harden is an incredibly talented player, and I will say that I believe he is still the best guard in the league. But for the most part, James Harden is not an emotionally charged NBA player, and I think this is to his detriment. So let's talk about when the Rockets played the Lakers in 2020 during the second round of the playoffs. In the first game, the Rockets beat the Lakers pretty handily, 97-112. The Rockets were playing a small ball lineup, and James Harden said this in a post-game interview. You can be 7 feet tall, but if you don't have heart, it doesn't matter. If you don't have that dog in you, it doesn't matter. Which is pretty funny because the Lakers went on to win 4 straight and eliminate the Houston Rockets. James Harden should have listened to his own post-game interview. I don't want to say that James Harden doesn't put in effort. I think he spent years developing new parts of his game, and he became the most dynamic player in the league. But at the end of games, he does not take control, because a lot of the times this happens on the defensive end of the floor when you're getting stops, and this is not part of what James Harden does. Let's talk about Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals in 2018. The Rockets had the Warriors right where they wanted them. They were up 3 games to 2, and in the first quarter they were outscoring them 39-22. I remember thinking, oh, the Rockets are about to knock out KD and the Warriors. This is really cool. But by the end of the third quarter, the Warriors had caught up to the Rockets, and in the fourth quarter, the Rockets only scored 9 points. Harden in that game went 12 of 29 from the floor, and 2 of 13 from the 3-point line, and had 6 turnovers. But the real tragic part of this game is Harden had 0 points in the fourth quarter and only put up 3 3-pointers. I think this was James Harden and Chris Paul's best opportunity at winning a championship. Personally, I think Chris Paul should have played in Game 6. His injury in Game 5 really didn't look that bad.
Paul guarded by Cook. Paul on the spin. Rebound, Lee.
I was always rooting for Chris Paul to get a championship, but after this game, I really stopped caring about his career. I always liked Chris Paul because he is a dog, and I think this is why a lot of players don't like him. Chris Paul is a 9-time all-defensive player, and he's led the league in steals for 6 seasons and is 3rd in all-time steals. I think he's an incredibly frustrating player to play against because he plays incredibly tight defense. He's so frustrating that it prompted Rajon Rondo for this sneaky spit attack. For 10 years, Chris Paul took the most difficult defensive assignment. He even locked up Kobe in the playoffs for 2 games. Regardless of how you feel about Chris Paul, he gave it all every single game, up until about 2019. So I think Chris Paul historically was a guy that made it happen during games, versus James Harden, who was a guy that took his game home and brought whatever it was out on the court, if that makes sense. One player I want to talk about that plays with a lot of anger is Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen fans probably think that there is some dog in there, but I assure you there is not. He falls into the category I call badgers. That's Dylan Brooks, Draymond Green, Marcus Morris, all those dudes. Players need to channel their emotions into relentless defense and really hard work, not lazy vindictive plays like this.
For a moment, then DeSumu's got it, hits the trailer, Caruso, and a hard foul on Grayson Allen as Caruso hits the deck.
Alex Caruso fractured his wrist during this game. He was out for 8 weeks and he needed surgery. This was a really bad play by Grayson Allen, and he was assessed a flagrant 2 and was suspended for a game. I think the worst part of this is Grayson Allen didn't even take responsibility for his actions. He called it an unfortunate incident. This is not the first time Grayson Allen has been guilty of violent basketball plays. As a matter of fact, if you look on YouTube, there are tons of compilations of dirty plays by Grayson Allen. I think the league needs to do a lot better job of protecting their players from players like these badgers. A 1-game suspension for clobbering a guy to the ground when he's in a vulnerable position? I don't think so. On the other side, I think Alex Caruso is a guy with some serious pooch energy, and I think he's going to be an all-defensive player this year. I love Alex Caruso, but even as a Laker fan, I think he got a little bit too confident at the end of games when it came to three-point shot selection, but that's a conversation for another time. Alex Caruso deflected 226 balls this year. That's the 6th most in the league, and he played 2/3 the minutes all the guys above him played. Another honorable mention for Dog of the Year is Fred VanVleet. Fred had the most deflections this year, and he is always in the top 10 for most miles run during the season. I think Fred VanVleet is one of the most underrated players in the league. But who is the ultimate dog? You probably already know who I'm gonna say. It's Jimmy Butler. You saw it in the thumbnail. Jimmy Butler is the ultimate guy that is focused on getting that win. Let's talk about the time he unleashed the dog when he was in a practice with the Minnesota Timberwolves. In September 2018, Jimmy Butler was a Timberwolf, but he requested a trade because he thought he was on a team full of I'm talking about Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. He showed up to a practice unannounced and said, I want to play against the starters and I'll play with the 3rd string team. According to reports, that 3rd string team dominated the starters for 3 straight games. Apparently, Jimmy guarded Karl Anthony Towns and he said to him, you can't do against me. This is his teammate. A week or so after this practice, Jimmy Butler did an interview with Rachel Nichols, where he articulated perfectly what it means to have a dog rip its way out of you.
I love the game, and I don't do it for any other reason except for to compete and go up against the best to try to prove that I can hang. So all my emotion came out at one time. Was it the right way to do it? No, but I can't control that when I'm out there competing. Like, that's my love of the game. That's raw me at my finest.
So this scrimmage prompted the Timberwolves to trade Jimmy to Philadelphia, who at the end of the season didn't end up re-signing Jimmy. And instead they signed Tobias Harris, which prompted this shit talking after the Heat took out the Philadelphia 76ers last year in the playoffs.
Tobias Harris over me?
He didn't have to bring Toby into it. Tobias Harris, by all accounts, is a pretty nice guy. I really like trash talk. I like the way Jimmy trash talks too. I think he calls out players for not playing hard, but he also sets himself at a higher standard. Even this year, during the first round of the playoffs, he was talking shit to Drew Holiday, the best perimeter defender in the league, and he was cooking him. Jimmy finished the Bucks off with this shot.
Going on is Jimmy Butler. And overtime in game 5.
Obviously, Jimmy has a lot of talent, but you can't deny that this shot came from the sheer will to win. I think Jimmy Butler peaked in the 2020 bubble during the finals. Jimmy's Heat team was nowhere near as good as the LA Lakers that year, but the Heat managed to take him to 6 games. During that series, Jimmy averaged 27 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists, and he became only the 3rd player to get a 40-point triple-double in the finals. He was also averaging 41 minutes a game, which was more than anyone in that finals. I think there need to be more beefs in the league, like healthy beefs, guys pushing each other to be better. We need more Jimmy Butler types. That's all I'm saying. So thank you for being here. Leave a comment, like the video if you remember. I should say that at the beginning, but whatever. Be good to your mothers, eat your corn dogs.